this room understand the importance of being active in politics. If we're not active, if we don't let our voices be heard, then the other side gets to decide what's important. And I think that we need everybody to understand that and to support people who actually step up and do the hard work, like Joe Sestak and Joe Haas. And I'm going to turn it over to Joe and let him talk to you for a few minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really glad to be here tonight. And I think the reason I'm here is probably the very same reason why you are here. It's not just about Joe. It's about the values that he represents. And I really honestly believe that they are the very best values. And they're also not just the best values for him, but they represent the best in our American character. I go around the state an awful lot. I just came down from Erie the other weekend, did 3 events up there. I was out in Allegheny County just earlier this week. And everywhere I go, I hear people talk about, particularly the Republican Party, American exceptionalism. Some of them very well understand it and get it, and others don't. But my take on it is, it's not a Republican, it's not a Democrat, proprietary claim that you can have on American exceptionalism if you really understand what those 80 countries I visited when I was in the Navy, how they view our extraordinary American exceptionalism. And so I want to take a moment and just talk about it, because it's an American value, and it's so well embodied in him. And that's why I'm here. I can probably best tell you about a story, from the story. When I arrived off Afghanistan and commanded an aircraft carrier battle group, I launched 8 pilots that very first night. 7 of them were veterans. Most of all, they had been in the first Iraqi war, almost all of them. But that evening I put up what we call a nugget. Someone who had never been over a foreign country before in an aircraft. And it wasn't her aircraft. It was a 27-year-old woman. They went off that evening under strict orders not to dive below 20,000 feet unless they had requested my permission, so that we could first do a scan below and see before they had to head down lower to help someone, whether there was or was not any Taliban that had shoulder-fired munitions, shoulder-fired missiles that could endanger the aircraft. But that woman that night disobeyed the orders. 8 special forces had been ambushed. 4 had died immediately. The other 4 radioed up and said, "Die, now, straight. Don't lay down on laser-guided munitions. They're too close. We just need someone to cause some confusion so we can get out of here." She dove, disobeyed the orders immediately. Down to 3,000 feet, and straight 3 times. Those 4 men picked up their dead comrades and got out of there alive. The point of the story is this. When I joined up during the Vietnam War era, we did not have women on ships. Never mind flying a the front line fighter aircraft in the United States Navy. But because she was given an individual opportunity to be all she could be, the common mission of the United States Navy, the common enterprise that evening, better succeed. Those are the 2 qualities that I believe are embodied in America's exceptionalism. Rugged individualism, always in alliance with our common mission, our common good, our common wealth. And that's why I think Joe needs to be in Harrisburg. That is health. We Democrats don't own it. There are many fine Republicans who actually understand that. But I don't think that they are the ones that are actually in charge in Harrisburg today. We Democrats tend to have a dinner every year they call the Thomas Jefferson, Andrew Jackson, Jefferson-Jackson dinner. And we do that, I think, for a reason. Those 2 presidents are the ones that first represented each of those 2 values. Thomas Jefferson did the first when he wrote those wonderful words. Historic, the Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal and endowed with certain inalienable rights. And then, with his brethren, our forefathers, he put together a constitution that made sure that that government could not intrude on our rights. Freedom of the press, freedom of religion, freedom of speech. They put such limitations on our government with great checks and balances within them that unlike England with a monarch in which our forefathers had fled to come here, they wanted that government to be in checks and balances. We were to be protected from too strong a government. You can see that in the convention in Tampa. That rugged individual that was spoken about quite eloquently. But Andy Jackson came along and said, hey Tom, you only got half of it. Don't forget those 3 words that the Constitution begins with, where it said, we the people. And what he said is, we also as representatives are to meet the needs of the people. He said that, you know, government isn't only to be prescribed from interfering in our lives unduly, but at times it can actually advance our rights. It can expand our rights. The Republican presidents did that very well. Abraham Lincoln established a land grant universities because we were about to enter an industrial age and we needed educated workforce. The transatlantic, the Pacific, the Trans-Pacific Railroad. Republican President Eisenhower came along and said, you know, World War II was ended. We need a trained workforce. And so he established a student loan program. He then established a small business administration where the majority of young, I should say middle-class Americans work. Small business. And then he established the interstate highway. And then Republican President Nixon came along. And he said, you know, we need a government that can also protect our citizens, not against itself, the government, but also against those who have private industry and unduly are polluting our waterways or our fields. And he established, President Nixon, the Environmental Protection Agency. In short, I would argue that we are at our best when we actually do recognize that we so much like this rugged individualism. SEAL Team 6. Who doesn't think they aren't the very best in the world at rugged individualism? But mind you, they come together and have each other's back as a team in order to be successful. And that's what we do. We create an extraordinary opportunity for individual opportunity, first by the establishment of individual rights, which takes some time to get for everybody equally like they did for women to fly fighter aircraft. But then we take our collective efforts and our collective resources to build tall ladders for success. And all we ask of those brave individuals who are so brave and courageous to climb it on their own is to say, don't pull the ladder up after them. Help us build one more rung so their children and our children can climb even higher for their prosperity and our commonwealth's prosperity. So what you have is an individual here who actually, I don't care about the issues particularly that he's addressing today, but as I said over here, we have the values to address them correctly as new ones come upon our table. We know the challenges we have today. Think about our government here, that what they've done in Harrisburg. In Berks County last year, 1 out of every 80 boys born had autism. And yet our state government cut the autism budget by 10%. And yet we're having an epidemic in autism. I was just up, as I mentioned, in Erie County. The city of Erie, you've all heard of it, right? The city? So in the dark of the night a few months ago, the administration said it's no longer a city. It's a rural community. Why? Because rural communities, when they're given general assistance, are given less by law for a rural citizen than for an urban citizen. So less money has to be given to those who are in need. And then think about Marcellus Shale. I am a purebred capitalist. I believe that, you know, done well, that we should be actually exploring for natural gas for jobs. But then I think about the U.S. No, I think about the Pennsylvania tax rate. Since 1976, Gerald Ford, the Republican president, started it, gave $10 billion of production tax credits to the energy companies that were trying to develop natural gas coming out of shale. Plus, we gave them millions of dollars in order to develop at our labs in the government the drill tip, diamond drill tip that is able to drill down in shale, and able to have a 3D imagery in order to see what's down there. I just want a return on our investment that we taxpayers put in. I'm a capitalist. If you invest $10 billion, shouldn't I be able to have an excise tax like the other 15 states of natural gas, where I get a return on my investment? Rather than just saying, I'm going to cut education, I want a return on my investment so that I can put it into a human, a child, in education, get a return on that human capital investment. And I know I've gone on a bit. Please understand, as I know you do really, what is at stake in this election and why I'm not here for Joe. I'm here for the values he represents. They're not democratic values, they're American values, and I lived in the military, and you will too if you go in. We love rugged individuals, but more than that, we need that common mission to survive. We also have a government that intrudes upon us. Think about a government that has actually said, I'm going to make it more difficult for you to vote. A government that says, Electoral College, I'm going to change 220 years of tradition in our state. And then a government that can say, I will do an invasive medical procedure in your body, even if you don't like it, just turn your head. No matter what you think about the issue of choice. Our government, Tom Jefferson said, was not to intrude upon it. Andrew Jackson said it was to meet the needs of the people. From one who has autism, to give them the best chance of life, to making sure that that transportation bill that was studied in committee actually gets off the desk of the government. And finally begins funding for 6% of structurally deficient bridges we have in the state. As I end, yeah, Joe, I'm here for it. Not only because you got those kind of values reading the back, but that you actually care. It's not a question in my mind. You want to do well yourself. Abraham Lincoln was one of the most ambitious presidents we ever had. But he always knew his ambition in search of the communion of the United States. I would ask you to help out Joe on those two F's that every campaigner knows about. That first F is friends. 5,000 doors you've knocked on, he needs other people who remain 10 days to help him knock on them once more. I came so close to my Senate race, even though my Senate race, of any Senate race, any governor's race in all of America, except for the governor's race in California, had the biggest funding gap. 20,000, 3,000 television ads on the other side, I was doing 11,000. Why did we come within two? Because of friends. Pure and simple. As the governor's race lost by 10 and 5 congressmen won, I had friends. Number two, it is some fun. You don't have to have more than the other guy, I'm convinced of that. But enough to get that mailer out there in public. So what I'd ask you to help out, I did my little bit. I wish it was a lot more. But I would all ask you, it's not for Joe. It's to have Joe there so he represents those who are American values, not Democrat, American. Thank you very much for letting me introduce Joe.
Oh my goodness, I do not know how to follow that up. And I know I can't compare to what Joe has done for this country and what he has done in Washington and what he will do for Pennsylvania moving forward. But I know this about myself. Joe keeps his word, I keep my word. Joe, when he campaigned, and funny connection that we have. One of Joe's campaign staff was my first campaign deputy director, the first time I worked in politics. And he instilled in me, when you campaign, you work 100 hours a week. You work 115 hours a week if you have to. You don't stop until the day after election day. And if you stop, you're not doing your job, you're not doing what you need to win. And we're doing what we need to win in this county and in this district. We have not had a Democrat elected here since 1982. We're going to change that this year. We're going to make that different. Knocked on 5,000 doors, as Joe said. Steve, Zach, JT, I thank you so much for everything you've done. Fran, it means so much. We are making a difference out there, and you know that. And we're not just talking to Democrats, because, as Joe said, we're Pennsylvanians, we're Americans, we do have common values. And when we say Democrat and Republican, minds close automatically. But when you say your property taxes are too high, your schools are getting gutted, and the gas companies are running wild over us, people listen, and they support us. And especially they support us when they meet and when they know Gary Day and what his record is. Gary Day voted for voter ID, voted for the illegal redistricting, who supported and originally co-sponsored the mandatory ultrasound bill, one of the most invasive pieces of legislation ever introduced in Pennsylvania. Somebody who wants to eliminate our property taxes and replace it with a system that underfunds public education by $1.5 billion. This is who Gary Day is, and when people realize that, they respond to it, they support us. And it's support that will be rewarded, because if I'm working this hard to get elected, I have a full-time job. I work 90 hours a week at my job. I'm on the campaign, golly, 30, 35 hours a week on top of that. I'm on doors every day. If I'm working this hard to get elected, I'm going to work even harder when I get in Harrisburg to make sure we get things done, to make sure we affect positive change in the state, and to make Pennsylvania great again. Thank you.